Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Theater Library Association's Book Awards. I'm Anne-Marie Van Russel.
And I'm Suzanne Lipkin. We are both joining you from the Billy Rose Theater Division at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts.
We are the co-chairs for TLA's Book Awards Committee, and tonight we'll also be your hosts for this annual awards ceremony.
We are so pleased to spend this time recognizing the achievements of the past year in performing arts scholarship. Tonight we will hear from our winning authors and the jurors who chose them.
The George Freely Memorial Award, named for NYPL's former theater curator, honors outstanding books on live theater or performance. We thank our dedicated jurors, Rachel Bauer, Benjamin Gillespie, and Marty LaMonaco.
The Richard Wall Memorial Award, named for the TLA member and former Book Awards chair, honors outstanding books on recorded or broadcast performance. Much gratitude to our long-standing team of jurors, Kathy Fuller-Seeley, David Pierce, and Stephen Tropiano.
Our jurors select the winners from dozens of books nominated in each category. And this year, the topics of these outstanding works, as you will hear, range from groundbreaking documentary filmmaking to the Hollywood adaptation of an iconic Broadway play,
and from the technologies of stagecraft in China to representations of Indigenous Americans on stage, to the pandemic-altered labor of the American theater today.
As librarians and archivists, we especially look forward to hearing about the research that inspired, challenged, or even confounded the authors into producing these books. And as a complement to these awards, we also wanted to share a small sampling of the special collections materials from our own holdings here in the Billy Rose Theater Division that directly relate to these topics. If you missed the slideshow as you came in, we hope you'll stick around after the ceremony to enjoy it on the way out.
And now we will hear from outgoing President Diana King on behalf of the Theater Library Association. Then TLA's Professional Awards Committee will present this year's Louis Rachow Distinguished Service in Performing Arts Librarianship Award, followed by the Book Awards presentations.
Thank you so much for being with us. Sit back and enjoy.
Hello, my name is Diana King, outgoing president of the Theater Library Association, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the annual TLA Book Awards Ceremony, celebrating award winners for outstanding English language works of scholarship on live and recorded performance that were published in 2024. Congratulations to all the awardees of the TLA Book Awards, as well as the winner of the Louis Rachow Distinguished Service in Performing Arts Librarianship Award. TLA is proud to recognize all of the talented authors, scholars, and professionals who were honored this year. Arts institutions, including libraries and archives, face ongoing threats and challenges, and your contributions to the field underscore the relevance and importance of performing arts research. I also want to particularly thank the Book Awards Committee and the Professional Awards Committee members for all their hard work and long hours reviewing the many deserving titles and applications that were received this year. Although TLA is currently in a period of organizational assessment, the Book Awards have remained a consistent annual event made possible by the efforts of this committee. If you are interested in helping out with future Book Awards planning, please send an email to tlaBookAwards@gmail.com. Finally, thank you as always to the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts for its longstanding support in making this public program possible. Now please enjoy the rest of the program, and congratulations again to all the winners and nominees.
Hello, I'm Gail Leander Wright, an independent scholar who focuses on the works of Stephen Sondheim. In 2021, I was happy to find myself in a group that included Stacy Wolf, professor of theater and music at Princeton University, Anthony Shepard, professor of music at Williams College, Rick Pender, whose Sondheim Encyclopedia had been recently published, Ted Chapin, longtime president of the Rodgers and Hammerstein organization, and Stephen Sondheim. We came together as a little ad hoc committee with one purpose: to nominate Mark Eden Horowitz for the Theater Librarians Association's Louis Rachow Award for Distinguished Service in Performing Arts Librarianship. Speaking for Stacy, Tony, Rick, Ted, and myself, I can't tell you how happy we are that the TLA has decided to honor Mark this year. Mark Eden Horowitz is a senior music specialist in the music division of the Library of Congress. His special expertise is musical theater. Since the 1990s, he has curated archives for some of the most significant creators of musical theater, including Leonard Bernstein, Richard Rodgers, Jerome Kern, Marvin Hamlish, Cole Porter, Alan J. Lerner, Frederick Lowe, and Jonathan Larson, among many, many others. This archival work is foundational to the development of musical theater scholarship and continues to be a treasure trove for research. Mark is considered the most knowledgeable curator by musical theater scholars around the world. He has distinguished himself as a writer, public speaker, advocate, interviewer, and mentor. His encyclopedic knowledge of the library's music division's holdings has made him the indisputable go-to person for all questions, simple and complex, which he answers joyfully and with dispatch. Mark has helped thousands of researchers, as is evident from the frequency of heartfelt acknowledgement to him in books and from the number of citations of his work. Mark's impact on American musical theater studies has been profound. In Shepard's anthology, Sondheim in Our Time and His, for example, nearly every author cites Mark. Mark was a constant resource as Rick Pender assembled entries for the Sondheim Encyclopedia. Stacy Wolf frequently emails Mark with her own questions and questions on behalf of her students. Mark's replies are uniformly fast, knowledgeable, and encouraging of every undergraduate's inquiry. The depth of his commitment is demonstrated by the fact that Mark has made himself readily available to me, an armchair scholar with an insatiable curiosity about Sondheim's works. Mark's 2003 book, Sondheim on Music, Minor Details and Major Decisions, with transcriptions of his deeply insightful interviews with Stephen Sondheim, won the ASCAP Deems Taylor Special Recognition Award and the ARSC Award for Best Research in Recorded Popular Music. Mark's book, The Letters of Oscar Hammerstein II, was published in 2022 to great acclaim. Mark co-produced concerts at the Library of Congress, including one for Stephen Sondheim's 70th birthday, which was broadcast on NPR, and the West Side Story 50th anniversary celebration. Mark has taught musical theater history at Georgetown University and at Catholic University, and has guest lectured at Harvard and Princeton. Mark has just completed a heroic task, one that he began 32 years ago, when Mark invited Stephen Sondheim to visit the Library of Congress's Performing Arts reading rooms, in hopes of persuading Sondheim to donate his manuscripts. As Mark tells it, the turning point came when Mark showed Sondheim George Gershwin's handwritten score for Porgy and Bess. Tears flowed, a relationship was strengthened, and a promise was made. Knowing that Sondheim's papers would eventually live at the Library of Congress, Mark had the foresight to conduct and videotape 6.5 hours of interviews in Sondheim's New York home in 1997, in which he asked Sondheim to drill down to the details of handwritten notation and marginalia. The interviews provide a candid look into Sondheim's compositional and lyric writing methods. They were made possible by Mark's informed curiosity and musical expertise, as well as the trust that he had earned. The Stephen Sondheim collection was made available to the public in 2025. We could have gathered to celebrate Mark's invaluable contribution to musical theater studies at any time during his long and productive career. But it is especially appropriate this year, the year in which his long-term campaign to gain stewardship of the Sondheim papers for the benefit of the public came to fruition. I am so pleased to introduce Mark Eden Horowitz.
I want to thank the Theater Library Association for this great honor. I want to thank those who nominated me. The reality is I'm an incredibly lucky fellow. For the last 34 years, I've gotten to work in the Performing Arts section of the Library of Congress, where our collections truly are unparalleled. And it's been an honor to work with them and to bring more in. But frankly, the greatest pleasure of my life has been getting to work with researchers. They make what I do meaningful. And so I thank you all for coming, and I hope more of you will come soon. But but thank you very much. Take care.
Well, good evening. My name is Kathy Fuller-Seeley.
And my name is Stephen Tropiano.
And with our colleague David Pierce, we are the judges for the 2024 Richard Wall Memorial Award, which honors exemplary work in the field of recorded performance. This year's first prize goes to this delightful book, Patricia Ofterhide's Kartemquin Films, Documentaries on the Front Lines of Democracy, published by the University of California Press. Author Patricia Ofterhide recounts the nearly 60-year history of the innovative Chicago-based documentary production company Kartemquin Films, highlighting its filmmakers and their focus on themes of socioeconomic status and identity, the organization's internal structure and governance, and the evolving marketplace for documentary films. Through interviews with dozens of filmmakers, activists, and historians, Ofterhide takes us on a colorful journey along with the Kartemquin Group as a collective, a production house, and a media arts center. High-profile projects like Hoop Dreams and so many others demonstrating their compassionate intimacy in storytelling have successfully been shown on PBS, NBC, A&E, and Al Jazeera America. This fascinating book shows, as she writes, how filmmakers/philosophers brought the dream of making documentaries strengthening democracy to award-winning reality, with help from nuns, gang members, skateboarders, artists, disability activists, and more. On behalf of the judges, we congratulate Patricia Ofterhide.
Hello, and thank you for this prestigious award from the Theater Library Association. I very much appreciate it, and I know that everyone at Kartemquin Films also appreciates it. Kartemquin is an organization that has existed over 60 years, and it really is a great honor for me to be able to celebrate the archivists and librarians who made it possible for me to do this work. Obviously, I needed to interview a lot of people, and I certainly depended on my own experience of interacting with a lot of people at Kartemquin. But the other key to telling 60 years worth of stories was the archival access. And that happened because a librarian, as I recount in the book, worked with Kartemquin over 10 years to archive all the material, I should say an archivist, and make it ready to give to Washington University of St. Louis, where a wonderful archivist named Andy Urich, at the moment that I needed to access all these materials, went through the recently received materials that had not yet been cataloged by WashU and sorted through all the materials that I had identified that would be important to me so that I could work for almost a week in his archive and go through them all. And that work was essential. Librarians and archivists have been close to my heart throughout my career. One of the great, great honors and pleasures I have had is creating codes of best practices with the Association of Research Libraries, and in creating a guide to managing orphan works of all memory institutions. These are some of the things that are available at cmsimpact.org, the Center for Media and Social Impact.org, and /fair use. And also, if you have any wish to get in touch with me to get further information on the work that we've done with archivists and librarians, please contact me at, if you can spell my last name, you will find me through my university. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you for the important work that you do every single day.
And I am pleased to announce that the special jury prize goes to Philip Gefter's Cocktails with George and Martha, Movies, Marriage, and the Making of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Catherine will show you the book. Okay. That's okay. There
Here
you
we
go.
go. Kathy,
There it
here's
is.
the wonderful book.
It's a wonderful book published by Bloomsbury Publishing. In this chronicle, the making of the 1966 film version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, author Philip Gefter takes an insightful, revealing look at the creative collaboration between the talented artists and actors who brought Edward Albee's groundbreaking play to the screen. Gefter's book is a perfect blend of storytelling and historical research that recounts the many participants in creating a film that was not destined to be the excellent, groundbreaking movie it turned out to be. The story of the production is simultaneously told from multiple perspectives, including playwright Edward Albee, first-time producer and screenwriter Ernest Lehman, first-time director Mike Nichols, the high-maintenance star couple Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and in the background, an aging Jack Warner. Whether you love the film or not, it's a compelling story and beautifully written. This is a remarkable achievement. And I'd like to read actually some remarks that Philip wrote in response to receiving the award. I am honored to be the recipient of the Theater Library Association's Richard Wall Memorial Award Special Jury Prize this year. I just want to say I wrote Cocktails with George and Martha for several reasons. One, I saw Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the film, for the first time when I was 15, when it was released in 1966. It was the first movie I had ever seen that reflected life back to me in a way that seemed true. Over the years, I saw it periodically, and it got truer and better. It's a movie about a marriage. It's also a movie about marriage itself. You might find yourself laughing out loud one minute and gasping in psychological horror the next. It keeps you on an emotional tightrope throughout a long, drunken debauch of a late night nightcap. Yet, despite George and Martha's very bad behavior toward each other and their guests, at the core, it's a story about love, the truest rendering of love in all of its vicissitudes that I know. Secondly, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was a phenomenon in its time. It started out as a huge and unlikely success on Broadway. The migration from theater to film is always fraught, and given the cast of characters in the making of this movie, despite the glamour of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, the genius of first-time director Mike Nichols, and the Hollywood know-how of producer Ernest Lehman, it could have been a big, expensive flop. Instead, movie magic was made. How did this happen? Well, it was a pleasure for me to get lost in the story of the making of this masterpiece and to automatize the encumbered process of its difficult birth. I wrote Cocktails with George and Martha to show how much work goes into the nature of art making, how rare and inspired it is to reach for something true and to experiment with form and touch people in a meaningful way that is relevant to their lives as only art can do. Third, this book is my homage to Edward Albee. He was a god to me in college, a pioneer of the theater of the absurd, and a towering figure in the cultural life of the 20th century. I hope my book brings renewed attention to his play and to the film as something as relevant today as it was when it was written. His examination of marriage is so incisive about human nature that I believe it will always speak to audiences now and in the future. I want to keep his legacy alive. So thank you for this meaningful acknowledgement. And on behalf of all three judges, we congratulate this year's winners.
Hello, I'm Rachel Bauer, an assistant professor of theater arts at Sacred Heart University, and today I'm happy to announce one of the co-winners of the 2025 TLA George Friedley Book Award. Red Face, Race, Performance, and Indigeneity by Bethany Hughes dives deep into history and theory, especially within Indigenous studies, to explore quote-unquote red-facing, not just as simple racism or cultural appropriation, but as a complex political practice that's changed over time. Hughes breaks down how we've come to recognize certain images as quote-unquote Indian, and her analysis is both intellectually accessible and methodologically sophisticated, balancing detailed archival research with critical theoretical engagement. Her research is thorough and detailed, but what really stands out is her sharp, engaging voice. Redface is thought-provoking and a necessary addition to the field. The text itself is masterfully constructed with a wealth of images throughout. In addition to the core historical and critical chapters, Hughes intersperses an essay on Indigenous theater and performance throughout the book in a non-linear manner to allow readers to see how Indigenous theater has been obscured by, but also disrupts, redface. In the introduction, Hughes says the essay is, quote, spaced non-sequentially because its inclusion is not primarily to transfer information from author to reader, but to demonstrate the simultaneity and disruption of Indigenous theater and the labor that is necessary to engage with it. The author encourages the reader to, quote unquote, meditate on this disruption caused by the essay pages. Redface, Race, Performance, and Indigeneity is a feat of scholarship that is highly deserving of the 2025 George Freely Award and its positive attention that it's garnered in the realms of theater studies and Indigenous studies. Congratulations, Dr. Hughes.
Alita, hello. Thank you to the award committee and to the Theater Library Association. It is an honor to share the 2024 George Freely Memorial Award for my book, Redface, Race, Performance, and Indigeneity. As professionals dedicated to collecting, preserving, and highlighting work across many medium and representing many fields within the performing arts, popular entertainment, and recorded media, it is especially gratifying to know my work is resonating with you. I deeply appreciate your work contributing to our shared knowledge of and access to scholarship and artworks, and I am grateful to be part of that work. My book explores the aesthetic, racial, and political implications of a theatrical repertoire often termed redface. I was motivated to write this by my own experiences as a Native American woman training and working in American musical theater, as well as my scholarly education in race, performance, and Native American studies. In writing this book, I sought to answer such questions as, how do audiences recognize a stage Indian character? How are these characters formed through material and immaterial processes? How does the racialization of Indigenous peoples in popular commercial U.S. theater contribute to the foreclosure of Indigenous sovereignty and tribal self-determination? And importantly, how do Indigenous performers use performance to their own ends alongside of, despite, or in response to the stage Indian? My book tells the story of Redface as a collaborative curatorial process between artists and audiences who seek to affix abstract racial ideas of the primitive or savage Indian to embodied live performances. Detailing the theatrical techniques used to portray and identify stage Indian characters, the book goes on to explore the gender dimensions of Redface performance, as well as the relationship among history, authenticity, and representation. I also explain the real-life stakes of racializing performance practice, showing how being read racially as an Indian impacts Indigenous people's legal and political possibilities. A chapter on the musical Annie Get Your Gun details how challenging fixing redface is if you do not properly diagnose the problem. For redface is not just a racist performance technique. It is a political project that asserts authority over Indigenous peoples by creating a fictional but material depiction of the Indian. To challenge the hegemony of the stage Indian, I included an essay on Indigenous performance history in the 19th and 20th centuries and structured it in a way that invites readers to rehearse what reading a performance of indigeneity, rather than Indianness, would feel like. This essay, called Hinoshi'ila, which means a different path in my ancestral language Chatanumpa, is interspersed throughout the larger chapters, necessitating an intentional movement across pages. My hope is that the labor it takes to read intentionally about Indigenous performance will provide readers with the opportunity to reflect on their own reading practice as a theater audience member and how they can use those skills to seek out a more complex, nuanced, and interesting depiction of our shared world. This award is especially meaningful to me since this book simply would not exist without libraries, librarians, archivists, and the teams of people who work every day to preserve and make available objects that tell us our collective history as makers, consumers, and lovers of the performing arts. My research for this book meant spending time with 19th and 20th century documents, advertisements, books, plays, recordings, and photographs. I took advantage of institutional archives, such as those at the Native American Women Playwright Archive at Miami University and the Western History Collection at the University of Oklahoma. I also spent time in public libraries and museum archives, such as the New York Library for the Performing Arts, the Library of Congress, and the Will Rogers Museum and Archive. I also benefited from digitized collections, such as those at the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian. The major effort to digitize academic library collections over the last decade or so also enabled me to read 19th century Indian plays in the lockdown era while working from home. I was also the recipient of gracious support by the McCracken Research Library at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West and from colleagues at Dartmouth. During the deep pandemic era, when repositories were closed and research funding and travel restrictions prevented me from going to archives and libraries, I encountered a series of people who supported me in gaining access to materials I needed, including an undergraduate research assistant at Dartmouth who could physically access the collection for me only off and on as she navigated COVID restrictions. This book reflects my scholarly work, of course, but it also reflects the professionals who care for, collect, and make available countless special collections, circulating collections, digital collections, archives, boxes, folders, and all those foam triangles, book weights, gloves, pencils, and paper for researchers like me. Thank you for this award and for recognizing the importance of Native American representation in theater. And thank you for making my study of that history possible. Yakoki.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Gillespie, and I'm Assistant Professor of Theater at Santa Clara University and another member of the Friedley Award Committee. I'm pleased to present the other co-winner of this year's Friedley Award to Dr. Taryn Chun. In her groundbreaking book, Revolutionary Stagecraft, Theater, Technology, and Politics in Modern China, Taryn Linmin Chun redefines modern Chinese theater through the lens of stage technologies. Dr. Chun applies an approach that she calls techniques as method, a multi-layered framework that questions how humans make and interact with technical objects on stage and backstage, and how these interactions shift with time and technological advancement. In applying this framework, the book reveals how revolving stages, neon lights, and other technical innovations became tools for envisioning revolution in 20th century China. Drawing on an impressive range of plays, technical manuals, and design schematics, Dr. Chun demonstrates that stage technologies were never neutral devices, but sites where artistic innovation and political ideology converged. Importantly, she also points out that technologies should not take a subordinate position in theater in relation to acting, directing, or playwriting. As she writes, quote, stage technology links theater to realms of technical knowledge, production, and circulation, as well as to the larger technical systems of ideology, economics, and culture, end quote. Spanning the 1920s through the 1980s, this richly researched book shows how behind-the-scenes labor and stage machinery were central to China's theatrical and political transformations. The committee was unanimous in its decision to award Revolutionary Stagecraft as a co-winner of this year's award. Congratulations, Dr. Chun.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taryn Chun, and I'm absolutely delighted to accept the 2024 George Friedley Memorial Award for exemplary work in the field of live performance for my book, Revolutionary Stagecraft, Theater, Technology, and Politics in Modern China. It's an enormous honor to be a co-winner of this award, not least because libraries and archives were such an important part of the making of this book. My project rereads canonical works of modern Chinese drama from the perspective of the stage technologies involved in their theatrical production, and I demonstrate a method of reading theater through technicity by drawing together a wide range of literary, historical, and technical documents. I focus primarily on the genre of huaju, or spoken drama, and show how staging spoken drama intersected with shifts in the material apparatus of the stage from the 1920s to the early 1980s in China, with a brief foray into sung theater during a chapter on the Cultural Revolution period. Throughout, I'm interested in deceptively simple questions. For instance, when the realist plays Thunderstorm and Sunrise by Cao Yu were first performed in the 1930s, how did designers and technicians create the effect of their titular storm and sunrise on stage? What lighting units and dimmers were available in theaters at the time, and what innovative techniques were developed when the ideal stage equipment wasn't available? These are technical but illuminating questions because the answers reveal how Chinese theater artists were thinking about the relationship between page and stage, as well as the relationship between the technical modernization of the theater and the politics of technological modernization broadly writ. However, these are also not the type of questions that are answered in most existing literature or historical narratives on modern Chinese drama, nor are the answers typically apparent in documents like play scripts. So, writing this book involved assembling a vast and rather idiosyncratic collection of materials that included scripts, yes, as well as performance photographs and reviews, and published essays by directors and designers, but also technical journals and manuals, set design renderings, lighting plots, prop schematics, and stage technology how-to guides, often written for amateurs. These are the materials that fascinated me most throughout the project, and my favorite stories are the ones of technicians rigging up what they called homegrown or two stage technologies, like a makeshift revolving stage or re-engineered set props so that they could be carted up mountainside roads too small or rocky for motor vehicles. Because it relies so heavily on previously untapped and understudied technical materials, this book would not have been possible without a number of libraries and archives, and especially a rapid increase in digitization of Chinese library holdings during the 10 plus years that I was working on this project. In the US and UK, I benefited immensely from the holdings at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts, Harvard University's Harvard Yenjing Library and Houghton Library, the Oxford University Bodleian Libraries and the KB Chen China Center Library, the University of Michigan Asia Library, and the extreme generosity of the Hesburgh Library at my current institution, the University of Notre Dame, which was able to acquire a number of materials during the course of my research. I'd particularly like to thank librarians Ma Xiaohe, Fu Liangyu, and Heijin Jun for their assistance over the years. The bulk of the book's source materials come from libraries and archives abroad, including the National Library of China and the Capitol Library in Beijing, the Shanghai Library and the Shanghai Theatre Academy Library, the Nanjing Library and the Shanghai Municipal Archives, the Beijing People's Art Theatre Archives and Museum, and the Shanghai Dramatic Art Center Archives, as well as the National Central Library in Taipei and the National Taiwan University Libraries. I paid many visits to and spent many hours in these libraries and archives, and I'm eternally grateful to all the staff who helped me locate rare books and materials and made endless copies and scans for me. I also benefited greatly from the digitization projects spearheaded by the Shanghai Library, as well as the China Max Digital Library and the CNKI database. In closing, I'd like to thank the TLA jury for taking the time to read my work and for the honor of this award. I'd also like to thank my editors at the University of Michigan Press, Leanne Fields and Sarah Cohen, and their remarkable production and marketing teams, Yael Present for her developmental guidance and cheerleading, and Michael Natt for his meticulous copy editing, and of course, all of the mentors, colleagues, friends, and especially librarians and archivists who helped me find materials, hone ideas, and bring this book into being. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marty Lomonico, and I'm very pleased to announce that Theater Work, Reimagining the Labor of Theatrical Production, co-written by Bradine Clements Cotton and Natalie Robin, was the unanimous choice of the Friedley Award Committee for Special Jury Prize on the very first round of deliberations. This extraordinary book details the abuses endemic to the American theater industry: systemic racism, sexism, ableism, unfair labor practices, and white supremacist culture, and offers thoughtful ways to fix them. Cotton and Robin took up the challenge offered during the pause, the recent COVID-19 pandemic that shuttered theaters for over 13 months, where, quote, workers stopped working and started talking. To prove the assertions being made by exhausted, disgruntled theater workers who had experienced all of these injustices firsthand. And the authors make their case with aplomb. They limit their study to designers, assistant designers, artisans, technicians, and stagehands, the often invisible workers, and build their case via a range of research methodologies, including surveys, interviews, data analyses, and literature reviews. Their book details hiring practices, production operations, worker safety, and what they term people operations, encompassing employees' bodies, time, and energy, and how these are nurtured or not in the workplace. The authors demand radical change, which they admit isn't going to be easy or smooth. Quote, "This is a call not just for dreams, but for disruption, for an examination and diagnosis of theater making, which may end with a theater field that looks very different from the one we have now." The Friedley jury hopes this timely, necessary book is not an end in itself, but a beginning. Congratulations and best wishes.
Hello, I'm Breeding Clements Cotton.
And I'm Natalie Robin. We're the co-authors of Theater Work, Reimagining the Labor of Theatrical Production. Our book considers the work of theatrical production, asking, when the art is the work, how do employers navigate the balance between creative freedom and consistent personnel processes that promote accessibility, equity, and sustainability? Do theatrical production operations value the worker?
Thank you to the Theater Library Association, the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts, and the Friedley Award jury. We are incredibly honored to be recognized in this way. Congratulations to the award winners and the other finalists as well. The field is better for all of our work. As always, we extend our sincere gratitude to the production workers and the arts and labor leaders who took the time to share their experiences with us through interviews and through our production worker survey. 1,037 workers completed our worker survey. 23 production employers completed our employer survey, and we interviewed 22 individuals. Thank you all for contributing to this work.
And we want to thank our collaborators. Wayne Carino for demystifying the data, Delaney Tien for strengthening the research, Christy DeVilius for caring for the details, Noah Meese for your energizing illustrations, and Carmen Morgan for your powerful words. And of course, our families and friends who supported this work.
We wrote this book to uplift the voices of workers, many of whom have only had these conversations in private amongst friends. We found that there is relatively little published about the labor of theatrical production. There's much more research available about who performs, writes, directs, and produces in the American professional theater. There's a gap when it comes to backstage workers. Therefore, much of our research, instead of using existing archives, we created one of our own, which we hope to find a way to share. In addition to the words of workers who completed the survey and the folks we interviewed, we were lucky enough to access a variety of studies and archives, which we really depended on, including Black Backstage Workers, 1900 to 1969, by Kathy Perkins, Who Designs and Directs in LORT Theaters by Pronoun, by Portia McGovern, Meg Friedman and David J. McGraw's Return to the Stage, January 2021 survey, the US ITT Entertainment Design and Technology Workforce Demographic Study results, and the survey conducted by Production on Deck and Portia McGovern asking, where is all the production staff? We could not have done our work without this work.
One of the most challenging aspects of our research was into the history of theatrical production workers. We're deeply indebted to the scholars and workers who have combed through the archives that exist and written about this little-known history. We can only hope that unions, especially the IATSE, will make their histories more accessible for future scholars. We also know that most theaters hope to create production archives, but often lack the resources to create and maintain them. When productions do get archived, there very often tends to be a focus on documenting the product rather than the process by which theater is made.
We hope that our work can encourage more institutional support of and commitment to developing and maintaining archives that document the labor of theatrical productions and can give access to the voices of the production workers making theater every day. Thank you so much for this honor and recognition.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Once again, we congratulate our winners on their impressive accomplishments, and we look forward to hearing more about their future research.
We also extend our deep thanks to the staff here at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts who made this virtual ceremony possible. Adam Wasselchuk, Kelsey Lapagard, Jade Jang, Neville Braithwaite, and Nick Karalexis.
Visit nypl.org to learn about other upcoming public programs at the library. You can learn more about the Theater Library Association at tla-online.org. And please consider becoming a member.
And now the evening will conclude with a slideshow of select items from the New York Public Library's special collections related to this year's winning books.
Thank you all again, and good night.
Good night.